Hey everyone, I'm Nathan Hughes. Welcome to the Reconcile podcast. We're so glad that you're here. We believe that God is calling all of us to a better future and to look inside and see our potential. That's really what this podcast is all about. So I'm glad that you checked this message out. Hope that you enjoy it and be encouraged. Let's all go out and reconcile the world. Man, I feel this weight coming back from Thailand that I don't know when it's going to be lifted, but I feel it's this dichotomy. It's this kind of thing that doesn't make sense. I feel so unqualified to give this message tonight, but at the same time, I feel more than qualified to give this message tonight. And I think you'll understand that statement by the time this message is done tonight. But I think the reason why this message is so heavy and hard for me is because I feel like this message reveals what's wrong with our world. And it's not easy to be confronted with the reality of what's wrong with our world, because oftentimes what's wrong with our world is oftentimes what we see in the mirror. And I know it's tough, but it's gonna make more sense as I get into this message. And some messages are heavier than others, so show me grace tonight. I'm not trying to make all of us feel depressed when we walk out of here. It's not my goal, it's not my intention. It's gonna challenge us and motivate us. I wanna read from Jeremiah 17, verse 9. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can trust it? The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can trust it?" When I first read this verse, I got so offended and I took it so personally. I was like, what? What do you mean I can't trust my heart? That doesn't make sense. Why did God give it to me if I can't trust it? And the more I started to get to know Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit through his word, the more this verse started to make sense to me. And you're gonna hear me say some things tonight, and I'm gonna repeat them. That's because they're important to me, and I think they should be important to all of us. But I never really knew what evil was until I was confronted with holiness. And I never really knew what true brokenness was until I was confronted with absolute beauty. And so what I wanna do, you guys, is I wanna start off tonight by sharing a story with you. And I'm asking every single person in this room, every single person, if you're here tonight, be here. Let's get the most out of this. And I couldn't stand when people would ask me to do things like this, but whatever you need to do in order to focus on the details of this story and to put yourself into this story as I shared, it's gonna be like the next 2 minutes. And I want everybody to make themselves the main character in this story. And so imagine you're the main character, but there's a guide. And this guide is leading you somewhere, okay? So, and I know it's gonna be weird. Nobody get up out of your seat, but I'm gonna ask RJ to dim the lights. And I really want you guys, if you have to close your eyes, do it. If you just have to sit there and look down in order to focus, do it. If you have to watch my mouth as I speak, do it. So remember, do whatever you have to put yourself into this story. And I want you guys to think deeply about how it makes you feel. There's a guide, and he's leading you to a place that he has promised you will bring you ultimate fulfillment. You just have to trust him and follow him. This guide is leading you to a room, and once you get inside of this room, you will achieve your heart's greatest desire. In the room is where your dreams will come true. The very things that you fantasize about when you are drifting away in your daydreams will become a reality. In the room, you get exactly what it is that you want. The guide has led you down a dark corridor. It feels eerie and scary, and as you walk down this hallway, there's a large hole in the wall. And on the other side, you can see this mesmerizing light. The guide tells you, we are now here. You've made it. We are now at the threshold of the room. This is the most important moment of your life. Your innermost wish will be made true as soon as you step foot into this room. And here we are, the place where you can have exactly what it is that you want. Who wants to step inside first? You state, what if I don't know what I want? The guide responds, don't worry. That's for the room to decide. The room reveals all. What you get is not what you think you want, but what you most deeply desire. And I just wanted to ask you guys, just to process, how did that make you feel? You can turn the lights on, RJ. This isn't a Christian story. It's not a God story. It's a story about human nature. How many people would be willing to step into that room right now? You're like, yeah, heck yeah. And remember, you don't get what you think you want. You get what you actually want. Your heart's deepest desires. How many people would be terrified to step into that room? You know, so often in my life, I would give Christian answers, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna get Jesus in that room. Really, am I? Is that what my heart longs for more than anything else? Is that really what my heart beats for at its core? Because our heart is what governs us. Everything we do flows from it. And so I was reading this story and I was just like, man, I don't know if I'd want to go in that room. It's terrifying. Because there's some things that I think about and long for that I know I shouldn't think about and long for. And it's a part of who we are as a fallen humanity. And I wanted to share some stories about Thailand with you guys that are going to reiterate the importance of this story in this room. Because remember, we don't get what we think we want, we get what we actually want in that room. So there's this, in Thailand, you guys, where we were, 85% of the population that travels to Pattaya, Thailand is for sex tourism. So that means out of 100% of the people that go to Pattaya all year round, 85% of those people, and it's somewhere up in the millions, it's crazy, that travel there. 85% of those people is for sex tourism. And we met people that were in the industry that had been rescued and brought into a new place where they could work and find a career. But this is a true story about one woman, and I want to share this with you guys. So sex trafficking looks different. Very rarely is one story alike. And oftentimes they'll get people from very impoverished areas where literacy is at an all-time low, where they can't read and there's no education. So what will happen is usually someone who is very unsuspecting, probably like a European woman, will go to places like Uganda, and this actually happened. So there's a Uganda woman who works at a restaurant and she serves food there. And she makes less than $1 a day and she can't provide for her family. And this European woman is in Uganda and she's at this restaurant and she says, you do such a good job serving food. I actually own a business in Thailand and you could come serve food for me there and you could make 5 times as much as you make here. Would you be interested? And she said, oh, I don't know, I have to go ask my father, I have to go talk to my family. And so she does, and her dad said, absolutely, you could provide for us with that money. He said, go. So then this European woman, or whoever it is that's unsuspecting, would help this Ugandan woman get to Thailand, and then once she gets to Thailand, she would be picked up in a car and drove to the nearest 7-Eleven, where she would get out of the car and get into another car and go to the next 7-Eleven, because there's a 7-Eleven on every corner, and she gets into 3 to 5 different cars before she gets to a hotel room. And then she walks into this hotel room where a man is waiting for her, and she says, I'm here to serve food. And he said, no, you're not. You're here to serve me, and I paid for you. And this is her orientation into the life that she is now being welcomed into. Her passport will be taken from her, and she will be put into debt bondage, and she'll have to work in order to pay this debt off. And most of the women there will be there for 6 to 8 years if they're rescued. If they're rescued. And I was so shook when I was in Thailand, because the title of this message tonight is Unveiled, because I feel like the human heart left to itself is more wicked than we can ever imagine. And in Thailand, it's as if the veil was pulled back on the human heart. And you know what it's like, you guys? So often, you know the blinds that are at an angle and they let light in, but you can't see what's outside of them? You know what I'm talking about? They're like louvers or something like that. The blinds that when you spin them, they open up and let all the light in. I think for so many of us, it takes experiences like Thailand, or maybe like encountering it close to home. Maybe some of you have been around stuff like this. So often we're going through life and the blinds are at an angle and we can't really see past them. And it's not until we encounter this that we look at it from a different angle and we can actually see what's on the other side. You know what I'm talking about? And it's this unveiling process that happens. And so for me, I always knew that the human heart was wicked. And come on, left alone to our own thoughts apart from God and our own desires, like, that's why I said I'm qualified to preach this message tonight. Because I know the thoughts that I have, the thoughts that I have to fight to take captive and surrender to the Holy Spirit. So what I want to do tonight is I want to unveil the human heart. I want to pull back the curtains. I want us to be able to look through at an angle where we can see it all in the world around us and in our own heart. I'm telling you, because until that happens, this world is never going to change. This world is never going to change. I wrote down that all of us are 3 decisions away from being in that room. And I'm doing a play on words, right? Because when I said that room, which room did you think of? Did you think of the hotel room with the girl, or did you think of the room where you get your heart's deepest desires? Because for every single one of us, it's different. As a man, we have some desires that are terrifying, and as a woman, we have some desires that are terrifying, and those look different depending on each individual person. But we're all 3 decisions away from being in a very similar room that gives us our deepest desires, that gives us the things that we long for apart from a relationship with God. And these are the 3 decisions that, when made, send us straight into that room. And the first one is we turn our back on God. And then the second one is we use others. And then the third one is we start to dehumanize not only ourselves, but the people around us. How in the world can you get to a point as a man where you're paying other human beings for sex, objectifying them, using them for your own selfish gain? And you guys, this is so different for everybody. It's not just paying for sex. Every time I, as a man, check out a girl and look at her as if she's an object, I'm entering into this room. Every time I post a picture of myself to feel better about myself, that's kind of scandalous because I want to feel sexy. Yeah. I'm dehumanizing myself and I'm entering into this room. Do you guys feel me? Does that make sense? It's not just the man that's paying for sex in a hotel room in Thailand. It's not. It's every single one of us in our own ways. And that's why I'm saying, I apologize up front, but I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. We need to hear this, and I'm in this with you guys. But when we turn our back on God and we use others, we start to dehumanize not only ourselves, but the people around us. And we enter into that room and we're given our heart's deepest desires. And then we start to enter into a process, down a journey that starts to take us on this trajectory that leaves us feeling like less than a human being. But there's 3 decisions that we can make that keep us out of this room. And those 3 decisions are turning back to God, serving others, and becoming fully alive in doing so. And becoming fully alive in doing so. I'm going to read my thoughts to you guys, and then I'm going to unpack that. So here are my thoughts. I wrote this down. I said, we see what we see, and then we see God. So we go about our lives, and we don't really think about any of the things we're experiencing until we encounter God. So we see what we see, and then we see God. So we live our lives as non-believers, and then we're confronted with the truth of the gospel. So we see what we see, and then we see God. Oftentimes, we don't know how broken we are until we're confronted with how healthy and whole we can become. I never thought much about how evil this world was until I encountered pure holiness and love. I started to see myself and the world around me with a different perspective, with a new lens. My eyes were opened. They were unveiled. I never noticed evil until I saw what was holy. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can trust it? How does someone end up in that room? How does someone walk so far away from God that they view another human being as an object? Why do we so often, on a daily basis, enter into things that dehumanize ourselves and then put us on a path of not becoming fully alive? Once I can see how deceitful and broken the human heart is apart from God, it forces me to cry out for help. It forces me to cry out for help. And one of the verses that came to my mind was about an incident that happened to King David when he ended up taking Bathsheba. And if you guys aren't familiar with this story, King David is supposed to be at war. It's in the springtime, and he stays home. And he sees another woman bathing on her rooftop, and he's up in his palace. And he's looking down, and he sees this woman bathing on her rooftop. And he starts to have this thought. He says, I want her. He starts to have these desires, these longings. And he says, I'm going to have her. And so he has her come up to his palace, and he has sex with her. And she's a married woman, and he's a married man. And the man that she's married to is one of the commanders in David's army. And he's at battle. And he's a very honorable man. And David ends up having a child with her. And then David's prophet Nathan comes to him and he says, what the heck do you think you're doing? How could you objectify her like that? How could you dehumanize yourself and her like that? How could you let your heart run rampant when you know who God is? This is one of the greatest kings in Israel's history. And David was confronted with his brokenness and his sin in a way that he had never been before. And these are his words, Psalm 51. And I'm going to jump around from verse 1 to 10. Psalm 51, and I'm going to jump around from verse 1 to 10. He says, have mercy on me, God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion. Blot out my transgressions, wash away all my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my sin is always before me. Verse 5, surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me, yet you desired faithfulness even in the womb. You taught me wisdom in that secret place. Cleanse me, he says. Verse 10, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. We can't cry out for a pure heart until we're confronted with how broken we actually are. So until we can I would never do that. Don't even compare me to that person in that room. I would never do that. That's a dangerous place to be. I'm just going to tell you right now. Because I can even look at the trajectory of my life before I met Jesus, and I can see how I could have ended up in a horrible situation by turning my back on God, by using others, and by dehumanizing them in myself. And so I asked myself, it's not enough just to cry out, create in me a pure heart, God, and renew a steadfast spirit in me. What does that actually look at? How is our heart cleansed? How do we experience the recreating of our heart? Because, I think all of us would agree, we know that we have these desires and these longings, and we don't like them. We know they're not of God. We know they're of our fallen nature. And let me tell you, surprise, they don't often go away as soon as we come to faith in Jesus. They don't. It takes walking with him and for those things to be revealed to us. So in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, it says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So we have one verse that says, don't trust your heart. It's deceitful and beyond cure. But then we have another one that says, above all else, guard your heart, because everything you do flows from it. Everything you do flows from it. But what's the difference? That's a heart in God's hands. And once your heart is in God's hands, you have to start to protect it. And this is how it's cleansed. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 26. My son, my daughter, give me your heart and let your eyes delight in my ways. Give me your heart and let your eyes delight in my ways. You know what the problem is? Is so many of us try to hold on to our heart. We do. Psalm chapter 37, verse 4, it says, take delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Our heart left in our hands is a weapon of mass self-destruction. Our heart left in our Creator's hands is one of the most beautiful forces of love we could ever imagine. Ever imagine. And so I'm still like, what does this look like? And this is what I was confronted with after coming home from Thailand and processing this. These men didn't just end up in this room, right? These women didn't just end up at these bars. Some of the women willingly choose to be there because it's the best money they'll ever make. Some of them are brought there against their will, and some of them are forcefully brought there and kidnapped. Like, no situation is the same. But how do these women get to this place? You don't just wake up and you're there, right? So even for us back here, we all enter into things that lead us down one of two paths. And this is how we get there. We have two options. There's a formative process that happens. And this formative process doesn't happen officially until we start to have a relationship with God. So the formative process happens after you come to faith in Christ and you start walking with him. That's the formative process. You're being formed and shaped into the image of your Creator. So there's another word for it, sanctification, right? We're being formed and we're walking down this path and we're becoming fully alive. We're becoming fully human. But then there's another process. So if there's a process of formation that we can walk down and enter into, there's a process of deformation. I like to say deformation. And this is the process, this is the path that we walk down when we turn our back on God. And this is the way that we end up in that room. We really only have two choices, you guys. And it was kind of freaking me out because every single thing we do leads us down one of these two paths. Every single thing we do. The actual definition of deformation, this is the actual definition. It says, changes in an object's shape or form due to the application of a force or forces. So when we're being deformed, we're being changed, our humanity is being marred, we're being broken down by external forces. That's what happens when we walk down that path. As I was processing this and thinking about this and seeing what I was seeing, I started to feel despair and hopelessness in my heart. And I was just like, man, this is so bad. Seriously, as bad as you can imagine and worse. And in my despair, I started to think of the hope that I'd encountered in my life. And there are many days, especially recently, that I feel so unmotivated. And I feel apathetic. And I feel lost. And I find myself asking the question, what can I do? And I don't know if any of you have been there. Even about ourselves sometimes. Like, what can I do? I feel so broken and so lost. I've tried so hard. What can I do? This world is so disgustingly, heinously evil. What can I do? And it's in my moments of apathy, and it's in my moments of a lack of motivation that I'm reminded that I can do something. All of us can do something. I was reminded on this trip that every single decision we make matters. And you guys, I know this is such common sense, but when you see it practically lived out, it wrecks you. Every single decision we make matters. And every good decision is never wasted. When we were in Karat, we were out of the city. So we left Pattaya, the sex capital of the world, and we went to Karat. And Karat is 5 hours north. And Karat is where the kids that are often trafficked are brought down south to Pattaya. So there's ministries in Karat that are trying to educate these children and teach them how to read so that they can know when they're about to be trafficked and it can stop this. And so we went to Karat to help the ministry that was there, and we were in a room with all these kids that come from the slums. No running water, no electricity. They're living in things that are worse than shacks. And you'd never know it when these kids are on this ministry's campus in this room. And we're teaching them VBS stories. We're teaching them about the Bible. We're bringing out Play-Doh, and we're creating things for them. And one activity we did, we brought paint out, watercolor paint with paintbrushes. And one of the guys on our team was painting this picture with this little kid who was probably 6 or 7 years old, definitely no older. And the guy on our team was painting water, and he was painting the sun, and he was painting the sky. And I looked down, and there was this 6 or 7-year-old kid, and he was copying with every single paint stroke, literally exact replica of what the guy on our team was painting. And I had this revelation, and it rocked me. Every single one of us is painting a picture with our life. Every single decision that we make is a stroke to the canvas. And I'm telling you guys, there's so many times in my life where I'm like, what can I do? This world is so broken. I'm so broken. There's no way I can make a difference. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It's recognizing that with every single decision you make, every single decision, a smile to a stranger, a conversation with somebody that you just met for the first time. I don't care what it is. Guys, looking away when you know that you could be checking this girl out. Girls, refraining from putting yourself out there, whatever that looks like. Whatever that looks like. Every single decision we make is a stroke to the canvas of our life, and we're painting a picture. And so what happened was this kid who's surrounded by darkness, who feels like he doesn't have a way out, is looking at someone else who's showing them a better way. And that kid is copying that painting. That kid is mimicking his every move. And it gets me emotional because I'm telling you, you guys, every single one of us has so much power and influence, and we don't even recognize it. And when we don't recognize it, we start dehumanizing ourselves, and we start lowering our standards, and we start turning our back on God, and we start forgetting about who He has called us to be. And then we end up in this place that is so dark and broken, and we're like, how did I get here? And I'm telling you, you have an opportunity every single day to add a new stroke to that canvas and to add beautiful colors to this picture that is called life. And there's other people that need it. They need to see it. You wanna know why? Because I know I need to see it. There's days when I'm not motivated, and the people around me are painting this picture, and I get to look at them, and it inspires me, and it reminds me, yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. And I wanted to end tonight by challenging us. And this is a one-off, but I feel like this message is gonna stick with me for a while. We were over there, and Dre was like, Nate, I don't get it. I don't get it. How could it be so bad? How could men really be so disgusting? And I said, Dre, I don't know if any woman would actually get it. But me as a man, apart from God, I know how evil and how wicked my heart can be. I do. And until we're confronted with this evil and this brokenness, it will never change, ever. And that's why we need messages like tonight. That's why we need for the curtains to be unveiled. That's why we need to be able to look at this world from a different angle, to be able to see the light and see ourselves for what we actually really are, broken, but in the hands of our Creator, beautiful, unconditionally loved. And I move from that place. And then I start to serve others and show people what it looks like to live a life where you're fully alive. And so, you guys, this is just a journey for all of us. This is just a process. This is literally just opening up our hearts. And what I do want to say is, I want this young adult ministry to take, and when I say missions, right, I don't mean just going overseas, even though that's part of it. I want us to take our mission seriously. I want us to take responsibility for what's broken in this world. And I want all of us to be a part of making right what has gone wrong here locally and globally. And I just want to encourage you guys. I've been to Haiti 7 times. Thailand was so rough, so beautiful, so amazing. Ate more food than I could ever imagine that I could eat. And it was the best tasting food I'd ever had. And laughing and crying, tears of joy, seeing this culture that is just beautiful, but also witnessing the most evil and the most brokenness that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I know that I'm gonna go back to make a difference. And so one of the things that I want to tell you is continue to get out of your comfort zone, here, there, wherever you are. Wherever you are. Continue to face head on what it is that's broken in yourself and in this world. Because that's the only way that it's gonna change. There's a poem that somebody on our trip, her name is Liv, she wrote, and I wanted to end our time together by reading this poem. And I really want you guys to hang on to every word because this poem depicts what it's like. And so Ashley's gonna read this poem, and after that, we're gonna enter into one more song to close out our time of worship, and then I'm gonna come back up to pray for us. So please just listen to these words.
This piece is called Pretty Girl. Pretty girl, I see you. Your long hair plays as ocean waves, massaged by the sea wind. Your favorite spot of sand on that beach, the only place you call home. Pretty girl, they see you. Thieves of innocence, they come. Robbers bearing weapons in their hearts, and the air thick perfumed with sweat and sorrow and the buzz of those knotted power lines. The incest of humming of the red lights, the music of the hungry eyes, they are the soundtrack of your life. Pretty girl, I see you. Painting your lips darkly, your spirit darkly sits with silent sadness deep within you. Numb to every glance, and they advance. Pretty girl, they're coming to pay a price for you. To place their palm atop your head, to shame you with coins in their hands, to buy you, to see the hills and the valleys of your wonder that they don't belong to. They're coming. To pry the last morsels of joy from your breast with flesh sharp as knives, to wound the humanity you have left. Pretty girl, I see you. Bathing in the morning sunlight, that long hair upon your pillow lays, but it's forgotten how to play. Your eyes within some distant gaze, beauty has escaped this place. Pretty girl, I see you. I've come to pay a price for you. I bought you, not with coins in my hands, but with nails. Not with shame in my palms, but with a love that never fails. I see the hills and valleys of your wonder I fearfully made. I see the beauty beyond flesh that no mortal man could fade. I see the joy I carefully placed within your breast, in your long, beautiful hair that I painted myself. They buy you for one night. I bought you for forever. They spend their coins for you. I spent all my blood for you. They climb their pride for you. I climbed a cross for you. You suffer for them, but I suffer for you, because I can love you everlasting. Pretty girl, I see you. I see them too. I'll meet you in our spot on that beach. I'll go before and warm the sand for you. I'll tell those waves I made to play upon your feet, and we'll sit together, you and I, until you see me.